Alrighty, so I just almost ended that. So this webinar is on the FSA COVID Disaster Assistance, the DSA CFAP 2.0. Today we have Jamie White and Gail Gallickson, if I said that right. And they will be, or Jamie will be presenting. And I just wanted to say thank you and to all of the, everyone that's joining, and then praise to the producers right now. We know they're going through a hard time. We appreciate all your hard work during these trying times, and we're just thankful that you guys are still staying strong. I'll let Gail and Jamie introduce themselves if they would like to.
Very good, thanks. I'll just start. Thank you to IAC for setting this up and allowing us to share. My name is Gail Gallickson. Like you said, I work in Brookings, actually in the Brookings office, but handle state outreach coordinator and some beginning farmer and rancher duties I get to do for our state FSA, Farm Service Agency. And I'd like to just turn it over right away so we can jump in on our programs. We've got great information to share. Jamie White is our acting state executive director and does an amazing job. And she shared with IAC before, so we're always glad that she can jump in and share on behalf of FSA. So I believe I'll turn it over to her, and then she's probably ready to share her screens. So thank you all again for joining us, and thanks to you, Shatil, as well for hosting.
Well, thank you both, Gail and Shatil. And again, to just reemphasize, we're grateful to IAC for hosting this webinar and this educational opportunity. I know that FSA programs can be complex, and what we aim to do is provide you with the best information you have to make decisions for your individual ranching or farming operations. So keep the questions flowing during the presentation, and we will do our best to get the answers to you during the presentation or afterwards. We can definitely share those with Shatil and IAC to get that information out. But I will go ahead and get started, and I'll share my screen so that there's a PowerPoint we can all reference as we're discussing things along the way. Okay, just before I get started, I want to affirm with Shatil and Gail that they can see my screen in the PowerPoint slide. If you could give me a thumbs up.
We sure can.
Fabulous, thank you. All right, so as we discussed earlier, we're going to talk about the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, CFAP 2.0, as we affectionately call it here at FSA. We like those acronyms for some reason. And as both Shatil and Gail referenced, I'm currently the acting state executive director for South Dakota out of the state office here in Huron. And I do just want to point out that we have a great resource online, and it is available via mobile device at www.farmers.gov under the CFAP page. And that farmers.gov website is a great user-friendly website to get quick, easy, I guess, direct information pertaining to any of our current programs. So today we'll talk about CFAP 2.0, who's eligible and how to apply. We'll talk about the eligible commodities, and then we're going to talk about the different payment categories that pertain to those eligible commodities. Under CFAP 2, essentially USDA recognized that producers continue to be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and under CFAP 1, obviously there was a definitive time frame, and after we closed out that program, it was evident that there was additional need for support of farmers and ranchers throughout the nation. So when we're looking at CFAP 2, we want to emphasize that CFAP 2 is a standalone program from CFAP 1.0. It's not contingent upon participation in CFAP 1.0, and it is a new application process. So whether you participated in CFAP 1 or not, you could be eligible for CFAP 2, and no matter what, you would have to file a new CFAP application. There are additional commodities eligible under CFAP 2.0 versus the first round. That was something that USDA worked to identify were additional commodities that did have impacts or disruptions to the market as a result of COVID, and those were included under CFAP 2.0. There's a significant difference in the second version of this program, that payments will be made at 100% payment level up front. Under CFAP 1, we actually had a 80% payment cap up front to ensure that there was adequate funding. So at this point in time, participants would receive 100% of the eligible payment up front. And then payments will not be withheld to satisfy prior USDA debts or offset by Treasury. And this, again, is related to the fact that this is a national emergency related to the pandemic. The sign-up deadline for CFAP 2 is December 11th, 2020. I know that seems like a long way from now, but I think we can all agree when you start going to the store and seeing Christmas decorations before Halloween, that December will be upon us before we know it. So keep that date in mind. Who is eligible? That's always the question we want to answer up front. But a person or legal entity sharing in the risk of producing an eligible commodity could be eligible for CFAP. When we're looking at CFAP 2.0, this is similar to other FSA programs and that of CFAP 1. They must have an average adjusted gross income of less than $900,000 for the tax years of 16, 17, and 18, or derive at least 75% of their adjusted gross income from farming, ranching, or forestry related activities. And this is a provision that is in place to ensure USDA assistance does actually get into the hands of the individuals that are actively farming and ranching. They must produce commercially and they must be in business at the time of application. So that's a slight difference from CFAP 1.0 that we'll get into a little bit further. Again, we'll just clarify that participation in CFAP 1 does not make you ineligible for CFAP 2 or automatically eligible for CFAP 2. You did not have to participate in CFAP 1. You can still apply for CFAP 2. New producers. So we might have new producers that set up their operation within the last several months or this year, and they don't have historical sales records. They would still be eligible to apply. We have provisions to handle the new producer situation. And again, you must currently be a producer that is in the business of farming at the time of application. The payment limitation that's in place for CFAP 2.0 is $250,000 per person and legal entity. And that, again, applies to the total payment level for all eligible commodities. So if you have both livestock and eligible crops, that is one payment limitation. Corporate entities such as limited liability corporations, limited partnerships, trusts, and estates may receive up to 3 payment limitations if they have enough members to support those additional payment limitations and they contribute at least 400 hours of active personal labor. CFAP 1 and CFAP 2 have separate and distinct payment limitations. So an individual could earn $250,000 under CFAP 1, and again, under CFAP 2 could earn that $250,000 payment maximum. The application process for CFAP 2, again, is slightly different from CFAP 1. Whether or not you're new to USDA or you're an existing producer, obviously your key point of contact is going to be your local county office. Right now, because the pandemic continues to impact South Dakota service centers statewide, our offices are handling business virtually. That's typically the default. So you can go ahead and call or email your local county office and the application could be generated virtually. The other option is that you can access the online application process at farmers.gov under the CFAP page. However, you have to have an active eAuth account to generate that application because it's automatically pulling specific eligible commodity data from the FSA acreage reporting process. So CFAP 1 was very much driven on a manual application, and that could be filled out and emailed. CFAP 2 is a little bit more involved. So the only difference would be is if you have livestock only. And again, if you're a new producer, we would need to go through the process of populating name and address information, getting the information for direct deposit, filling out your farm operating plan, as well as your adjusted gross income certification. So there would be a few more steps, but we stand ready to help assist with that. Again, we'll highlight farmers.gov, the CFAP page. There's an eligible commodities finder tool where if you go to this page, it's going to walk you through all of the individual eligible commodities that we'll talk about yet in the presentation. We do have a customer call center that is a great feature FSA has stood up as part of the CFAP implementation. And it's the 1-877-508-8364 number. The operating hours are from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Central Standard Time or 6 to 6 Mountain Standard Time. And we have that call center that is staffed with experienced FSA employees that are at the service center level. They are all over the nation providing that support, but you can work one-on-one with those individuals. They can help clarify or answer questions and help connect you to the application process. So I do like to focus or highlight the call center because it does have expanded operation hours that might be helpful to you. When we get into the commodity categories, we'll talk about the eligible commodities and then what the actual commodity trigger is. So we have the price trigger commodities, we have flat rate row crops, and then we have sales commodities. So these all have different eligible commodities and different payment level criteria. When we're looking at the price trigger category, we're looking at the eligible commodities of acre-based crops that would include barley, corn, sorghum, soybeans, sunflowers, and wheat of all classes, broilers and eggs, dairy, so the cow milk, and then it's including, again, the livestock. So this would be your beef cattle, hogs and pigs, lambs and sheep. One specific difference with CFAP 2.0 versus CFAP 1 is breeding stock are not included. And that would be bulls if they've been exposed, or obviously after we've had a heifer that is at least calved once, they would no longer be eligible because they would be considered breeding stock. Open cows would also be considered breeding stock if they have already been bred and calved in the past. The price trigger for cow milk, we'll delve into that first. Obviously, we're looking at 0.012 cents per pound, and this would be for milk that is both produced or dumped from the months of April to August 2020. And then what we will take that actual historical milk production from April to August, and there will be an estimation of amount or an estimated production amount for the months of September to December 2020. So when we're looking at cow milk, producers simply report their production in pounds from April to August, and then our software is automatically going to calculate a payment through the month of December based on that estimated production in the future. Price trigger for eggs and broilers. We do have quite a bit of this in South Dakota actually, but there is a different price rate for the shell egg, dried egg, liquid egg, frozen egg, or broilers. And essentially what we are asking producers to do if they have eggs and broilers is to report their 2019 egg and or broiler production. New producers that would have eggs or broilers that do not have 2019 production would self-certify utilizing the 2020 actual production at the time of application. So we're going to take that current year production to help proceed with the CFAP 2.0 application. The price trigger for livestock, which I imagine is what many of you are very interested in. When we're looking at price trigger for livestock and the payment rate, it is very different under CFAP 2 again than CFAP 1. Under CFAP 1, we had many different types of livestock and classes within livestock. When we're looking at CFAP 2.0, we have 3 different types of livestock, which would be beef cattle, hogs and pigs, and sheep and lambs. And again, the breeding stock are excluded for all categories of those livestock. We're looking at a $55 per head payment rate for all beef cattle, $23 per head payment rate for hogs and pigs, and $27 per head for sheep and lambs. On the CFAP 2.0 application, what we're looking at, and again, this is going to be inventory based and it's price trigger payment based. So producers will certify their highest inventory by head from April 16th to August 31st, 2020 on the application. And that would exclude breeding stock. So if you participated in CFAP 1, do not automatically roll the production or the highest inventory level that you put on CFAP 1 on the CFAP 2 application. Breeding stock were included in CFAP 1. And then conversely, under CFAP 2, if you have calved, if you have purchased livestock, increased your herd, you're going to be able to claim that highest level of inventory. One question that we're often asked is, if I sell, on May 1st, if I sell 10 heifers to Gail and she owns them on May 2nd, can we both claim those same 10 livestock on the CFAP application? Absolutely. What we're looking at is the highest level of inventory between the dates of April 16th and August 31st for each individual eligible producer. Price trigger for acre-based commodities. This is a little bit more of a complex payment calculation, but what we're looking at for the acre-based commodities, producers will receive the greater of the eligible acres of the crop multiplied by a nationwide crop marketing percentage, multiplied by the crop specific payment rate, and then by the producer's weighted 2020 actual production history approved yield that we would get from multi-peril crop insurance. If a producer does not have a weighted 2020 APH approved yield, then what will apply is 85% of the weighted 2019 ag risk coverage county option benchmark. And we use that under the ARC-CO program for that crop. Or at the very minimum, whatever's obviously going to be the greater of this calculation, they would be multiplied by a rate of $15 per acre. So the lowest payment rate that would be received under eligible acre-based commodities is $15 per acre. The other point worth clarifying is if a producer has a multi-peril crop insurance established actual production history or approved yield that is lower than that of the 85% of the weighted 2019 ARC risk coverage county option benchmark, they will still be held to their actual APH history. But again, they will be paid a minimum of $15 per acre. When we're looking at the price trigger for acreage-based commodities, again, for barley, unit of measure, bushel, we're looking at a 54 cent payment rate. Corn, 58 cents per bushel. Sorghum, 56 cents. Soybeans, 58. Sunflowers, 2 cents per pound. And then wheat is going to be 54 cents per bushel. We also have the flat rate category that we'll go into, and the flat rate commodities that are eligible that would be very pertinent in South Dakota are alfalfa. And again, we should clarify that that's straight alfalfa, not an alfalfa grass mix or grass mix alfalfa mix forage, so to speak, but it's straight alfalfa that would be eligible. Canola, safflower, triticale, cranberry, flax, oats. We've got some rapeseed, millet that would also be eligible. And again, these are going to be a flat rate category. So the eligible crops that we just discussed, they're also listed online at farmers.gov. Failed acres would be considered eligible. So again, what we're looking at under the eligible commodities that are acre-based, we are pulling that information from FSA's acreage report, the FSA 578 that was filed this summer during 2020. So we're going to pull that acreage report, and if there hasn't been an acreage report filed to date, it would be necessary to file that acreage report before the CFAP application can be completed. So we're not verifying production, we're looking at the failed acres only. Acres prevented from being planted would be considered ineligible, and then crops intended for grazing, green manure, or left standing are also ineligible. And again, all of those flat rate crops are going to be based on a $15 flat payment rate per acre for each eligible crop. And again, we're looking only at acreage, not yield. When you're applying for acreage-based commodities, and that's either price trigger or the flat rate. So again, I get back to those traditional row crops, anything that we'd have an acreage report on. At that point in time, the acreage-based crop producers are going to be paid according to the price trigger and or flat rate payment categories. Again, you have to have the acreage report on file in the office first. And then at that point in time, FSA can go ahead and generate the pre-populated CFAP 2.0 application, pulling that acreage report information over. So it's one CFAP 2.0 application if you have acre-based commodities as well as livestock. The livestock you have to provide to FSA. That information needs to be provided to FSA. The acreage reporting information we can pre-fill and populate to help you with that if you already have the acreage report on file. We do also have the sales commodity category, and this is based on actual sales within the eligible time period. There are specialty crops, including fruits, vegetables, and tree nuts, aquaculture, floriculture, and nursery. Primarily what reaches us in South Dakota is that specialty livestock that is raised for food, fur, fiber, or feathers, goat milk, mohair, and wool. When we're looking at the sales commodity category, what is going to be considered eligible are those sales that include only sales of raw commodities grown by the producer, as well as sales from adding value like processing and packaging are not included. So if we start looking at that value-added agriculture, that is separate. We're only looking at the raw commodity. Producers will need to report their total commodity sales in dollars and cents on the CFAP application. When you're looking at the sales commodity, there are actually different sales buckets, so to speak, where there's going to be a different payment factor applied. And this is a progressive sales bucket. So the first $49,999 will fall into the payment factor of 10.6%. Then the second $50,000 to $99,999 falls into the 9.9% payment factor. $100,000 to $499,999 falls into the 9.7% payment factor. Everything over $500,000 to just below 1 million will be applied the 9% payment factor, and all sales over 1 million will be subject to an 8.8% sales factor or payment factor. So again, that's a progressive scale. And so you're going to get the benefit of the higher payment factor, you know, the lower the sales range is. And again, if we have new producers that do not have 2019 sales records, they are going to need to self-certify based on 2020 actual sales at the time of the application. And then we will be able to ascertain a 2019 sales record for that person. A producer's 2019 sales of eligible fruits totaled $75,000. And this is just an example to explain that progressive payment factor. And again, what we're emphasizing is, even though the producer had $75,000 in eligible sales-based commodities, the first $49,999 was assessed the 10.6% payment factor, and that remaining $25,001, the 9.9% payment factor did apply. When we're looking at key things that you should consider when you're filing a CFAP application, yes, it is very much producer certification based. Obviously, that's what we're doing to facilitate the application, but there may be a time if there's questions or if the application is spot checked, that documentation would be provided. So at that time, you know, you can go ahead and certify your production or your highest level of inventory. You can certify your sales records. I would also recommend that when you're doing that, you have that documentation available to ensure you're not forgetting something or leaving something out that you would be eligible for. The other piece of that is you can keep that in a file to be prepared for spot checks as we go down the road. You know, and that is something that could happen. We don't have the spot check procedure in place. And the other reason it's helpful is when you submit an application, our staff process many applications. They actually do have quite extensive knowledge about producers' operations within the county, et cetera. And they might see something that might prompt them to ask a question to ensure that you are applying for all eligible commodities and not missing something for which you would be eligible. And so that helps them, if they contact you, to seek that clarification. Again, we've talked about the application process. There are many different opportunities to apply for CFAP, whether it's contacting your local county office, whether it's going through the CFAP call center, whether you're going to the farmers.gov website, but you also have partner organizations such as IAC that are available to help provide free technical assistance to producers. So again, there's always options available. I just really strongly encourage you all to reach out to those partner organizations and reach out to FSA, because that's what we're here to do. After you sign your application, so you've got your application completed, you sign it, you submit it to FSA, then the question is, where are we at, what's happening? Once you complete that application, there's going to be a 60-day time frame that you as a producer would have to resolve any eligibility issues with your local office. So if you sign your application as of October 30th, you have 60 days thereafter to make sure all other eligibility documents are on file. And that might include the adjusted gross income certification that we talked about. Those are other eligibility documents that would be necessary. FSA will communicate to you if that's an issue, but that 60-day time frame is a drop dead time frame. I always encourage individuals, when you submit that application, ask and verify, do you have everything necessary for my application to be considered complete? And have that dialogue with FSA, and that's okay to follow up. The local office will begin reviewing the application after it's signed. And again, they'll follow up with questions or missing information, which goes back to having that documentation. The approved applications are processed for payment. Once we have a complete application on file and all eligibility documents, payment should be issued within 30 calendar days from the date that application has been submitted and considered completed. And oftentimes it's earlier than that because our offices are expediting getting these payments out. And again, you as a producer will be notified and provided an opportunity to respond to adjustments by USDA that affect a producer's payment. So for instance, if you certified a certain, level of inventory for livestock, 100 calves, and the office, when they reviewed that with the county committee, they felt they needed to make an adjustment and adjust those numbers downward based on information the committee had or based on other communication with you, you would receive due process where you could ask that the county office reconsider or the county committee reconsider that county committee adjustment at a later date. So you're always going to have that due process. Again, farmers.gov, the CFAP page is a great and outstanding resource. So please bookmark that and utilize that as needed. I do want to also just briefly talk about and emphasize the availability of FSA disaster set aside. And this is an option that FSA was able to implement as a result of the pandemic. And we've actually seen a significant amount of interest in the use of the disaster set aside availability over the last several months. But this is an option available to those individuals who are existing farm loan customers. So you'd have to be an existing farm loan customer, and there would have to be, merit or justification that losses were suffered as a result of the COVID-19 presidential emergency. And this might apply if there's the circumstance where the individual is unable to pay all family living and farm operating expenses, other creditors, and debts to FSA. There are certain eligibility requirements. And then again, there's a limitation on how much of that disaster set aside is available. And it's limited to the first or second annual installment due on the FLP loan during or after the presidential emergency for COVID-19. So disaster set aside wouldn't apply to a loan payment that was due in December of of 2019, for instance, because that was prior to the onset of the presidential emergency of COVID-19. If there's interest in pursuing disaster set aside, it's the borrower's responsibility or obligation to submit a written request within 60 days prior to your payment due date and not later than 90 days after that payment due date. There needs to be documentation showing that COVID-19 has had a direct financial impact upon your operations. So it might be unemployment, loss of market is a significant one that we're seeing in South Dakota, reduction in price or reduced income due to temporary plant or market closure. And there may be other information that FSA requires to make an eligibility determination. Ultimately, if you or somebody is a current FSA borrower and you feel that disaster set aside would be a valuable benefit to you and an option that you'd like to pursue, the best thing you can do is go ahead and contact your local FSA office and speak with the loan official who can help walk through that process with you. Installment to be set aside when we're looking at this under the disaster set aside, the scheduled due date of that installment must be between March 1st of 2020 and September 1st of 2021. And again, this coincides with that presidential emergency. If you have multiple loans outstanding, there's the opportunity to choose to have some or all loan installments to be set aside based upon that level of impact experienced by COVID-19. Again, we're going to highlight and emphasize the opportunity to get information in a timely and efficient manner from FSA via our Gov Delivery service. And this is available under fsa.usda.gov/subscribe. And you can enroll and select outreach and education. And that's going to provide timely and important updates for FSA programs and highlight deadlines in advance so that you can ensure participation in FSA programs. And at this point in time, I will go ahead and open it up to questions, Shatil. Shatil, I think you might be on mute yet.
I am. I will restate that question.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That was my fault. So there's a question on primary loan servicing. It says, what is the maximum statutory flexibility you can offer producers with a plan that works for them?
Gail, I'd like to turn that over to you because you are a loan official with that expertise.
Yeah, thank you. So with primary loan servicing, it's sometimes it's specific to the actual loans that are being rescheduled and re-amortized. So I think the question was about statutory limits as far as how many years. Is that what the question was? The limitation on how many years it can be rescheduled for?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it depends on the type of loan, whether it's an operating type loan that could go out for a maximum of 15, or real estate notes, we actually can only have them within the 40 years that we made them. So we can't go any further past that. So sometimes that ends up being a little bit different limitations. And we have a program that actually handles all of that for us. So it's specific to the types of loans and then the program, what it would see in order to make those payments, either lower the payment amounts or offer deferrals or something in order to get a feasible plan. So that would be working through with the loan officer on their application.
Alrighty. That's all we really had for questions, and then on the Facebook Live too. But I want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to do this. I know we really appreciate all your help and everything that's going on, even with all the pandemic and everything. So if there's any more questions, we can wait a little bit to see if anybody has one, and then we can call this a webinar. But yeah, we really are appreciative of you guys doing this. We know people had questions and maybe they couldn't make it today, but we have this recorded so that they can see it later on too. So, but if there's anything else that you guys would like to say.
I don't feel that I have anything more that needs to be shared other than, again, thank you, and we appreciate your help and cooperation.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate it too. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up for the day, and then we'll see you guys soon.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.